Welcome back. Well, this may be the last time we have an opportunity then to share amongst many other people in terms of learning the Constitution, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Justice, National Cohesion and Constitutional Affairs, in terms of what they've been doing for the last 3 months, and that is civic education, on making sure that you understand what the law says in terms of your rights, in terms of access to justice, and what in general government must do to provide for you. We're joined now by him, who was here last week, Gichira Kibara, and also the Japan ambassador to Kenya, the Honorable Toshihisa Takata. Welcome, Your Excellency. Welcome, welcome. It's good to see you. Let me start with you, PS, because for us, I want His Excellency to take us through a learning experience in terms of where they have come from as a country. What was the purpose for this civic education, and do you think that broadly you have achieved in a way empowering the people of Kenya in terms of understanding what the law says about their rights and what sort of access they have in terms of the law?
We've made an initial effort, but civic education is quite a long-term effort and continuous effort. So what we have done is basically put in place the basic infrastructure. In terms of developing the necessary materials. We have developed the curriculum. We have developed an overview of the Constitution. We've also developed a website. And all this will be available to the public very shortly, at least by mid-July. Some of the materials are already out in the public. We have also developed a simplified version of the Constitution.
Oh, nice.
And this will make it very easy for Kenyans to understand the Constitution. We've done the initial training of civil servants.
Nice.
We have trained all the senior civil servants in job groups R to T, which are the groups that deal with the policy and management. We are going to train another group between P and Q, which has a lot of the technical experts in government, about 8,000 of them. So far we have trained 1,200 through a very intensive process where we cover all the chapters of the Constitution. We've also been doing quite a bit of civic education through the radio. We had contracted 11 radio stations during this 3-month period. That is 9 FM vernacular stations and 2 Swahili stations, which have national reach. And then we've also been doing a bit of TV, including this particular program, to reach the policymakers.
Absolutely.
We also had contracted civic education providers who are non-state actors, civil society organizations. In every county, there were at least 2 organizations that were carrying civic education within the last 3 months. And these were recruited through a competitive process where we advertised nationally. More than 120 organizations applied. We pre-qualified through a very competitive process, 73 organizations. Out of which we qualified at least 36 that have been carrying out civic education. We have done a second call for proposals through the media, and we evaluated the bids this week. So we are expecting again within the next month to contract the civic education providers in all counties who will provide civic education for the next 1 year. But the entire civic education effort is 5 to 10 year effort. So this is just the beginning.
I see what you mean. Before I get to Your Excellency, there must have been a reason for government to sit and say, you know what, you must very aggressively, come up with a strategy to educate the people in terms of what the law says about them. Tell us about how that was created and the profound statistics that you came up with, realizing that perhaps that is a route to go rather than allow dare I say, leaders who are supposed then to take the people through this process. You as government decided to do it in a very progressive, in a very strategic sort of manner. Any specific reason why that happened? And what were the statistics you found, really?
Yes, the main reason is the understanding that the Constitution introduces very fundamental reforms.
Yes.
And all of us need to fully understand what the Constitution is saying about the way the country will be governed in the future.
Yes.
The Constitution also introduces new values for the way our country is governed. There is a value system that needs to be understood by all of us, and we start practicing those values. The only way that will be possible is if we fully understand the Constitution, all of us, from policymakers, political leaders, and the ordinary citizen. We are also going into an election where it is required that people elect good leaders. The only way they will be able to elect good leaders who can take us to the next phase of our development is if they fully understand what we are looking for in the new Constitution. So we did, as a Ministry of Justice, take a proposal to Cabinet to have a government-funded and owned process. And the Cabinet approved a civic education program. So we have received some government funding. But we have also received some development partner funding, including from the Embassy of Japan, whom we are partnering with, the UNDP, who we are also partnering with, and we are welcoming any of the other development partners who can support us, given the need for very massive civic education.
Absolutely. We are speaking to the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Justice, National Cohesion and Constitutional Affairs, Gichira Kibara. We are also joined by His Excellency, the Japan Ambassador to Kenya, Toshihisa Takata. Your questions on 2442 in terms of civic education. We've taken 3 months, but as the PS has said, it's a 5 or 10 or more year plan in terms of making sure that it becomes a culture, that you understand what the Constitution says about what your parameters are, and as far as your rights and your access to justice. Your thoughts on 2442? Throw us a line on Facebook, that's Power Breakfast Show, and Twitter @power_breakfast. So, Your Excellency, 1946, the Second World War is done. Japan has come back and said, now we must reconstruct our country, which is more like what we had said. We felt that our Constitution was putting us in jeopardy. So, a time to reconstruct who we are as a nation. Teach us, because you have a lot of 65 years plus experience in terms of your Constitution. Tell us what that process was for you, promulgating it in 1946, coming into effect in 47. What were the lessons learned, the challenges you faced, and do you see a similarity with your country then and us as a very young democracy?
Well, there are, of course, many changes in the background or historical background, but the one thing is very common. Japan at that time was in a time of big change. From the disaster of the war to the new future, reconstruction of Japan. And in case of Kenya, you are also in a very critical juncture of your history. And from the tragedies of post-election violences of 2007 and 2008. And you are now trying to reconstruct or making Kenya a better country. So one thing is very common. And in this juncture, I think the Constitution is a basis of not only political life, but also social and economic development of a country. So I think Constitution is very important. And implementing Constitution is, of course, important. Just written text alone, nothing.
Absolutely.
You need to implement. And in order to implement, the people, the masters of their own country, of their own destiny, they have to understand, they have to participate, and they have to actively participate in the implementation of the Constitution.
How did you get the citizenry to visualize a future of Japan in a very different way and very passionately then begin to understand their role in understanding first the Constitution and engaging, I would imagine then, leaders and societies in terms of saying, this is a blueprint of where you want to go as a country, then you must engage and engage passionately in it. What is it that you did that got the people to take it up? Because we know we are facing those challenges in this country.
I was not yet born. In our constitution.
In hindsight, yes.
Promulgated.
Yes.
But of course, the people of Japan in the year 1945 and 46, 47, they didn't know what to do, how to reconstruct our nation after the devastation of the Second World War. I think that our constitution gave people a hope and a future prospect of our nation. Clearly the sovereignty was now in the hands of the people, not the emperor. Emperor became a symbol of the people our nation, but of course sovereignty is in the power, in the hands of the people. And we had a very clear separation of powers, executives, legislature and judiciary, separation of power and checks and the balances. And also the people's rights and obligations, not only political but social and economic rights.
Right.
There is a stipulation also concerning autonomy of the regions. It's a devolution. So I think the constitution gives a clear picture of the future of the nation, and people try to understand. And then I think that certainly at the basis of the nation, our constitution contributed our success in the later days.
Well done. Well done. 2442, once again, your thoughts on 2442, questions to His Excellency Toshihisa Takata, the Ambassador Japan to Kenya. And of course, the PS joins us as well, Gichira Kibara. Talk about the challenges that you foresee happening. I mean, the emperor was a symbol of progression.
But at that time, yes.
At that exactly. It's, you know,
now emperor is a symbol.
Exactly.
Before
something else. What similarities do you see in terms of the challenges that you face as you give this civic education, in terms of understanding the citizenry, understanding what their role is in learning and empowering themselves with the Constitution, and the role that leaders can do this time around to completely demystify politics. That's what it is. It looks like it's a whole demon by itself and devoid of whatever happens in terms of a country's future. What sort of similarities do you see in their challenges and lessons learned that we can put together in terms of moving forward in our civic education? PS?
I think part of it is the massive scale of civic education required, and of course the resources required. That's quite a challenge. Because you're really saying that, like in the counties, you need probably to spend in the region of 100 million per county to do any substantive civic education. We are not even a quarter of that in terms of the current resources. So I think one of the challenges will be over the years to devote more funding to civic education. The other major challenge is the culture change. We have an entrenched culture of impunity, an entrenched culture of disregard for the law, an entrenched culture of selfishness, an entrenched culture of intolerance, particularly in the political terrain. So to actually get our leaders, for instance, to begin to understand what is public interest as opposed to the selfish interest, and to begin to live that life where they care for the country more than they care for themselves. That will be quite a challenge. To also get them to understand that politics is, in a democracy, is a competitive politics. It's not a place where when you lose it is a war. It's not a war.
Yes, exactly.
You know. The reason we are doing, for instance, elections is to get the best person for that period. And even if you lose for that period, does not mean it's life or death.
I know what you mean.
We are only providing leadership for the country.
Absolutely.
So to change that culture so that politics doesn't become destructive to the economy, that's going to take quite a bit. to also begin to mainstream the interests of the poor, the marginalized, the women, the youth. That we also take quite a bit, because over the years we have created quite an elite society where we worry so much about a fairly small group without spreading the benefits of democracy and development to the wider society. And our constitution seeks to change that paradigm. But that will require a lot of understanding for all of us, a lot of political leadership by the people who come into government in the future, and a lot of patience also by the citizens, so that they understand that the change is also gradual. It's not, you don't build Rome in one day.
Absolutely. Your Excellency, one is bound to ask, is it Japan's love for Kenya that you feel as a big brother that you need to be involved in how democracy is maintained and managed in this country, and hence the reason why you're a huge contributor to the civic education in terms of resources? Basically, what is Japan's, what do you call it, why are you doing this? You know, why are you involved in making sure that we put the processes properly together for this country?
Yes. Well, first of all,
what is your stake? That's what I wanted to ask. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, as I said, constitution is very important, fundamental importance of our nation. And second, Kenya, I think this constitution is very important for your future and stability and development of Kenya.
Right.
And Kenya is very important, not only for yourselves, but Kenya is important for East Africa, and Africa, and of the world large. So I think we really wish success of the implementation of this constitution.
Absolutely.
And particularly, well, I think the implementation of the constitution is a long process, so like a marathon.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think first stage is also very important. And you have been doing very well for the past 2 years, enacting a lot of legislation. But now, within a year, you will have a very, very important election.
Yes, yes.
Because we don't expect that you accomplish everything just with one election.
Right.
As P.S. Kibara said, it's a long process. The next election is also important, and the next election is important.
Absolutely.
But of course, the first elections is very important. So we need to support just in time
before anything else goes
goes
massively wrong.
Example, just we talk about free elections, but in order to conduct free elections, of course, the people have to know what kind of elections they are going to have. And Kenyan people need to vote for 6 different elections.
Yes.
So people have to understand
how that process works.
They have to understand, and they have to actually exercise of their right. And free elections, meaning, well, institutions have to guarantee free elections, but at the same time, people have to know that their ballot, the secret of their ballot, can be kept, and they need to have confidence in the country, in the constitution.
Absolutely. Question here, Bona PS, let's talk about the various components that you have. What are these components? And I know you mentioned them earlier in your introduction, but what are they and what have they achieved so far? You talked about public officers, empowering them. You talked about county civic leaders as well. But just compound them in terms of what they were and the success measures.
Yes, maybe just to begin by saying that the way we have structured civic education is that it targets both the demand side and the supply side of civic education. The demand side deals with what the citizen needs to know in order to facilitate the implementation of the constitution, including demanding his rights from government. The supply side provides for what the civil servant needs to know in order to provide for the rights that are being demanded and the services that are being demanded by the citizen. So in those two areas, the ministry has focused mostly on the supply side. That is capacitating the public officers, both the main civil service and the parastatal heads,
yes,
on how the Constitution requires that they supply the services that they are required to supply to the citizen, what the rights are of the citizen, what mechanisms exist for them to enforce those rights, what mechanisms are required to be put in place to provide those services and all that. So that is basically the way we have structured broadly the civic education.
Right.
Then we are using many methods. We are using media, and I had indicated that we had contracted the FM stations to provide civic education using the mother tongue, the local languages. So because we want to reach this to reach the really grassroots people who do not even speak English, but understand their mother tongue. We had also contracted the Swahili speaking, because Swahili is the national language, media to reach out. We had not contracted all the stations. I think it's important to clarify that, because at that time the funds were not in place. But in the next phase, we are going to, as far as possible, contract all media to provide civic education, because they target different audiences. We want to target also policymakers, and therefore we are organizing sectoral forums where we address civil society, the media itself, we address religious organizations, we address the private sector on the various aspects of the Constitution. So that's also ongoing. Then we also have the civil society organizations that have been contracted to provide civic education through actual meetings with the citizens in the entire country. And already we have organizations providing civic education in all the counties. Obviously not enough, but we are going to again upscale this so that there is better coverage.
Absolutely.
So people may not have been reached by now, and they may think that it's not ongoing, but it's because the counties are very big.
Absolutely.
So that's also ongoing. We are also launching the website, very interactive website. You'll be able to get civic education on Facebook, through Twitter, and all that. That's going to be launched by mid next month. It's already developed to be launched by next month. So there are many ways we are providing civic education. We also provided, we have developed the curriculum for civic education providers. We've developed the MATIC guides, that is guides on various aspects of the Constitution. We have a guide on devolution, a guide on human rights, a guide on the structure of government, a guide on representation and elections. And these then guide the civic education provider so that they provide quality education. Because one of the biggest challenges has been the quality of education, where some people are given very good quality, others are given very poor, and we want to ensure everybody throughout the country is given the same quality of education.
Question here for Your Excellency, and it comes from Mike. And Mike says, we appreciate the civic education taking place. Japan accords participation of persons with disabilities. How will you as a country ensure involvement of persons with disabilities for their rights and access in as far as Kenya is concerned?
You mean access to elections?
But I think access to justice, the way I understand it, access to justice, access to participation in as far as civic education is concerned, because maybe they also very strongly feel that that is lacking. And I know the
people with disabilities.
Yes, exactly. Hinted in terms of civic education using media and so on. But how much of it is accessible to persons with disabilities, either hearing, a sight and so on?
Well, in general, our development cooperation to Kenya in general, our scope includes those marginalized or handicapped people. As for the civic education, we provided certain support to the government of Kenya.
Nice.
And how to, say, distribute that resources is entirely up to Kenyan government. So as for civic education, we don't have any specific distribution of.
In fact, somebody's saying PS, just something for you to consider. Perhaps you need to put the constitution in CDs, DVDs, audio and visual implements, even for mobile phones, for free distribution to Kenyans to hasten the civic education. But let me ask, I mean, we already have existing infrastructure. I'm reminded of, I think it was Cuba, that very exhaustively use the state-owned media, to champion and to push forward. I think it was wiping out illiteracy. Yes. For that matter, we have that infrastructure here in terms of education, even in on primary level. There's, I don't know if they removed it from the curriculum. There's civic education. Yes. Did you perhaps also use this infrastructure to, like you said, resources is scarce, but using existing infrastructure then to push that agenda?
Yes, we are actually partnering with the Ministry of Education. Yeah. Even the development of the curriculum, we worked with them, Kenya Institute of Education. We are going to use the school system. We are also going to use the local government infrastructure. Nice. Part of what we are doing, for instance, with the civic education on devolution, is to use the local authorities, the town clerks and their staff, to carry out civic education within the local authorities. So that's ongoing. And then in terms of the civic education, the long term is basically targeting schools. So it's going to be part of the mainstream education within the curriculum of both primary, secondary school, and even tertiary education.
I see. Question here for you, Bana PS. What criteria did you use for civic education in counties? For nothing of that sort has been seen in Migori County. Which organizations did you contract? This is Mark Evans from Migori County.
I wouldn't have the name of it because there are very many. But what I want to assure him is that all counties are covered. And it was a team that evaluated the providers. We advertised in the newspaper for people to apply. They replied to bid. It was a bid, competitive process. Then a team was put together which had both government and non-government participants to evaluate who was best qualified to provide.
Because somebody is saying here, where was it? Something to do with CBOs not having been adequately used. He says to you, Bona PS, your guidelines to involve CSOs in civic education leaves out community-based organizations on the ground because of the requirements, including a non-refundable fee.
Not exactly. Let me maybe clarify that. What's important is to understand that this is government-funded civic education. And therefore it is following the government regulations and procurement. And one of the challenges with government funded projects is that they operate on reimbursement basis, which means you carry out the service and then you're reimbursed paid,
in terms of your services.
Yeah, so that is their concern. But we are focusing a lot on CBOs. In fact, most of the providers are CBOs.
I see.
And in terms of criteria, you only need to go to our website and the criteria is actually there.
I see. Let me wind up with you, Your Excellency, in terms of what you feel we can learn from Japan in terms of this whole experience in understanding the Constitution, using it to create your blueprint for your way forward. What is your advice to us, the Kenyan people? One. Two, to our leaders. And somebody has asked, somebody in fact is saying perhaps we should have a specific time to take our political leaders on a civic education, on understanding the Constitution, so they don't change it, whenever they feel like. Although I know they didn't quite touch on the Constitution, they touched on acts of Parliament, but you know what I mean. Lessons for the citizenry, and two, to the political leaders who Kenyans look at in terms of advice.
Well, of course, I'm not in the position to give you lessons. I studied a bit about the history of our Constitution. I think in the first 1 year from the promulgation of our Constitution, Japanese government invested a lot in civic education. For one, we printed 50,000 books. for civil servants who were cores of civic education in this respect. And also we printed and distributed about 20 million pamphlets explaining the content of the Constitution and also
in simple terms,
prospective benefits of the Constitution to I think every household of Japan. So I think that sort of investment was doing. So as for the general public of Kenyan people, yes, your participation is necessary, and you are the masters of this country.
That's true.
So just continue your effort.
Absolutely.
Like it's a long process, marathon, but
it is.
we know that Kenyans are about #1 in marathon.
Well done, Your Excellency.
We are sure that.
I wish you had a lot more time to do it. Thank you very much for coming on PS. Thank you. And thank you for your SMSs. Like His Excellency has said, we are the masters of our destiny. We being us as Kenyans, remember, we vote for the leaders we deserve. So if you do understand the Constitution very well and you would like to, and you like a country that is progressive, what mirror will you provide in terms of a leader that will take you there? Think about it. We are live on Citizen. Stay with us.
Watching Citizen TV guarantees.
Good morning and welcome back. We continue with our debate about counties, and today we in Baringo. We are talking to gentlemen, 3 of them, who want to be the governor of Baringo County. From my most immediate left is Mr. Benjamin Cheboy, who has been here before to talk to us about Higher Education Loans Board. And next to him is Mr. Simon Kiprono Chelgui.
Yes, thank you.
You are formerly from CDF?
Board.
And last is Mr. Samson Kibi. Mr. Kibi is a consultant.
Correct.
And let's start with you, probably, Mr. Kibi, having come here very early in the morning today.
Yes.
Tell us briefly about yourself and why you think you should be a governor.
Thank you, Mr. Njao, and everybody else watching, thank you very much. My name is Samson Kibi. I am a competent professional. I have worked previously in the public service, having worked for Telkom Kenya for close to 20 years, actually for 18.5 years.
Telkom Kenya?
Telkom Kenya.
Yeah.
Before last year, I retired on voluntary basis to concentrate on my consulting and in preparation for this county government, which I believe I'm the best suited candidate. I'll tell you reasons why shortly.
Okay, next, Mr. Chelgui.
Thank you, Mr. Mutegi. My name is Simon Kiprono Chelgui. I'm 43 years old and born and brought up in Baringo and went to school in Kabarak and Nairobi University. And I've been on running a private engineering firm for the last 20 years. And I've also served the public through CDF board as a national director and chairman of projects and technical committee.
National CDF?
Yes, national director CDF board.
Yeah.
And I've distributed over 20 billion shillings to all the 210 constituencies as the chair of projects and technical. I've oversaw the reduction of poverty nationally. And I've been focusing on reduction of poverty and equity distribution of resources. It is this reason that the devolution has come to be accepted in Kenya, and I'll be able to carry the same experience to Baringo County.
And Mr. Cheboy, why do you want to leave help to do politics?
Thank you, Mutegi. First of all, allow me to...
Yes, your background.
First of all, allow me to pass my condolences to the citizens of this country for the challenges that came recently. The heinous crime that was visited upon our people in Garissa is something that is unacceptable. And I wish to pass my condolences to the families of the people of Kenya, the leadership of this country, and the people of Garissa. And to say that, of course, I'm not new to Kenyans. As Chief Executive of Higher Education Loans Board, I've been there for a while, and I've done service for this country in various capacities with various experiences. I believe that the wealth of knowledge and skills and experience that I've acquired in this country over the years are very useful for this country, especially to the people of Baringo County. I have served in that capacity for a number of years, and the reforms that we've put in place have been great, and the citizens of this country have enjoyed the facilities that the Higher Education Loans Board has been providing. In that capacity and the wealth of knowledge that I have, I would like to transfer these skills and knowledge to the great people of Baringo County. Very illustrious, very wealthy. In spite of the challenges that we do have, I believe that I can give some serious offer of service.
Maybe we should go to the political affiliations. What are your political affiliations, all of you?
Where do you want to start?
Party?
Actually, Bwana, the issue of political affiliation may not be strategic to mention at this point in time, because as you realize, everybody must go in as an independent or as a member of a political party.
Which means you have not made up your mind which political party to join?
Contrary to that, I have made up my mind, except that there is a timing issue as to when you must announce, because it really matters. So as for me, I have a party in mind, but I will not be able to say right now.
Yeah, the issue of political parties, as all of them are registered, and the law and the constitution really provides that all the parties must embrace national outlook. Therefore, either of the parties that have already been registered and that really connects with the aspirations of the people of Baringo will be the vehicle that I would go for. So as of now, I'm really engaging the parties to really see the party that connects correctly with our challenges.
Don't you know the one that does that?
At the moment, the parties are actually, they've just been registered last month. And right now, they are in the formation of their policies. And what we are seeing now is actually none of the parties has actually come forward and put their policies. So what we are trying to do is to go through and engage the leadership also.
And you, Mr. Cheboy, what, being a civil servant, I don't know whether you belong to any political party.
Mutegi, I am by law, bound by law not to be partisan at this particular point in time. But as soon as the time comes, we shall be able to tell our citizens which party we shall be in. But more important is that we want our people of Baringo to be able to identify with leadership that is credible, that is transparent, that is accountable, that has clear vision and direction to transform the quality of lives of the people.
Mr. Kibi, you told us earlier that you worked in the KPTC.
I worked in, yes, and a later successor company called Telcom Kenya. I was at a senior management level when I retired last year. Of course, after restructuring exercise,